Welcome everyone to Flame On. I am Bryan, your bear of the day. I don't know. There's nothing good with that. I have my dear friend Steve Mowry from a comic book bears. Where did that come from? Wow, today is just a hot mess. Comic
It's all
book
good.
bears. Hello, Steve.
Hello, Brian. How are you?
I am exceedingly well, even if I am stumbling over all of my words.
It's
So
all
if
good.
you have not heard of Comic Book Bears, I would encourage you to take a second, Google that, go find us on your favorite platform. Both Steve and myself, along with Bill Zanowitz, and a cast of others, most recently including, oh my God, I'm going to butcher his last name, Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
Yep.
Got it. Yes. From Southern Fried Geekery podcast. We do a weekly live stream, not unlike this. However, ours are more usual, like deep dive on certain comics that we're reading or whatever.
Mhm.
But also occasionally we'll do interviews. So, if this kind of thing kind of excites you, you're enjoying this on all of the streaming platforms that it's currently up on. You can find us on, what is it, Libsyn, but it's on all the major podcast platforms. And our live streams
Yeah.
go to Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch as well. So all of those accounts, all of that stuff. If you just look for Comic Book Bears, you'll find us. What did I miss? Is that all? I think that's
I
everything.
think that's it. Yeah. Obviously we're on Facebook, so if you want to see when our next live show is, you can just check us out on Facebook there or YouTube as well. So.
Cena. So it's funny because Cena and I talked last week about everything he's up to, and for some reason I'm getting a reminder that I have a Cena invite. Uh, so I'm just gonna let him know that we did it last week, even though he probably does remember that. Um, so today, honestly, what we're talking about is barely Danny, and we're gonna show you some of that. It's all up on Instagram. Publishing pretty often. I don't think it's like daily, but it's at least a couple times a week usually. Um, we did an interview with the creator
Yeah.
of this, but offline. He's very private and doesn't want to do audio video interviews. So I wanted to talk about his work because I've been a fan of it for a long time. I know Steve, you have as well. So we have an interview from him that we're going to kind of work through here in a minute, but I thought we'd at least start talking about, what we think about Barely Danny and our experiences with it. So Steve, I'm going to respond to Cena's text real quick. Would you do the honors and kick us off?
Well, okay. As hopefully this is good, but I started reading Barely Danny maybe last year. And basically, it's just I was drawn by the immediately very cool, relatable, and very pretty, let's just say, imagery that the artist was doing. And it's very interesting if you go back, if you have been following him on his Instagram for a long time. He started out doing commissions and portraits, and his work was very photorealistic and just amazingly gorgeous. He just has a great way of capturing very realistic details for men of the bear persuasion, cub persuasion, otter persuasion, just basically anybody that you can think of. And then he started doodling certain characters, just freehand characters, possibly inspired by some of the many people that he's done artwork and done commissions for over the years. But he started recurring some of these sketched characters. And I think starting in, I want to say is 2018, when he started basically going to almost weekly, putting up these characters in either little vignettes, like one panel vignettes, or even multi-panel dialogues and situations and scenes. And it's just really fun. And a lot of it almost seems, and I think this is one of the things that he'll talk about in his interview, but because the characters seem very relatable, and because the characters seem just so realistic, even though they're clearly comic strip characters, people tend to get the artist mixed up with the artwork quite a bit. So he goes by Barely Danny in the Instagram, but that's the name of the strip. and it's not the name of the creator. He is not Danny, and which he's mentioned quite a few times in the Instagram and also on Twitter too.
I actually have. He did a self-portrait not too long ago, actually. So he has put that up on Instagram. I was going to pull that up real quick here, but I did want to real quick jump in. So this is one of those, you're talking about how he does like these great photorealistic kind of sketches.
Oh yeah.
So Tagame Banks, he did from Canada's Drag Race. He did a self-portrait. He did a portrait of her, which was really sweet, and she loved it. So that's really cool that she's tuned in. But you can see here, and I've actually got like that self-portrait. Let me pull that up too. It's with his characters. He did this. Where is this? It's one of these. Maybe it's this one. There it is. So as you can sort of see there, and this is, and in the background, you can definitely see some of the characters and the style of his art. You can also see that some of them are probably not safe for Facebook. But the good thing is he's really smart about how he segregates his content. If there's nudity, he will push that off to Twitter, or I think previously he did stuff on. I think I've heard about him on Tumblr. A while.
Yeah, and he also has his Patreon where if you subscribe with his Patreon, support him there. If he has any not safe for work or other sketches of his characters completely nude. And by the way, his nude work is beautiful as well. Yes. I mean, if you talk about detail, it's very realistic.
He gets the detail right in all of the places that you would expect and or want.
Yes.
Yes. I will tell you that, in fact, I was just flipping through it. Some of his male anatomy is very, very accurate, and I would say tasteful in a sense. Like, he's not one of these cartoonists that over-exaggerates male anatomy. On the traditional comic side, you got the whole cheesecake cartoonists that really like put women in bad, awkward positions and giant boobs and all that. No, we're gonna just call him Danny for the lack of a better word or better title. But the creator of Barely Danny, he likes to do very accurate anatomy on all of his work. The only time that varies, I mean, he does have, as you can sort of see on this picture, some more of a kind of the cartoony side of cartooning, if that makes sense. Going with the Scott McCloud sort of spectrum of from very, very close to stick figures all the way to photorealistic. He's a little closer, like not stick figures exactly, but the more cartoonish. But at the same time, his adherence to anatomy is always pretty good. The only times that he would vary from that would be if he's doing it sort of a manga chibi style, which he absolutely will use that vocabulary, and to great effect. I mean, it's very manga influenced, and we'll see that when we get to his interview. But he draws on a lot of sources to really pick the right style, for his storytelling.
Oh, definitely. I mean, his obviously he does go towards a more bara style sometimes. If we're looking at like manga stuff, so very much sort of a East Asian Japanese type of presenting these beefy men, but then also his chibi style is perfect, and I think that's one of the things that makes me really love this series and his work a lot, is that he has a lot of humor that's in here. So these aren't just cheesecake photos, these or cheesecake drawings. These aren't just really hot sketches of really hot dudes that he puts together, although there is some of that too. But he also does a really great job in bringing sort of very cute humor to a lot of this that I think makes it pretty relatable, I think, for a lot of people. So you have this is a perfect example here. So in the the top half of the screen, you'll see sort of more of the standard appearance of two of his characters, Zeke and Danny, and then right down below in the bottom left, there's Chibi Danny, where he'll throw in the Chibi Danny or Chibi Zeke or Chibi everybody really for some great expressions, and it's all perfectly placed. And
Yeah, I
wonderful.
love this sketch or this particular nice sketch, I guess, comic, because it
Hmm.
captures both that chibi style, but also the sense of humor. So,
Yeah.
and this, as you alluded to, so this is Danny. He's in the pink shirt there, and Zeke, his partner of a decent amount of time. I forgot exactly how long they said they've been together, but the ongoing two main protagonists.
Hmm.
And I love that Zeke. I'm not entirely sure what his ethnicity is, but definitely not a white. You know, so he does have some great people of color throughout the cast, as we'll talk about them
Hmm.
a little bit here too. So it's a very diverse cast, and they're a great couple. They have all these funny interactions. A lot of it's playful, sort of like idealistic boyfriend material or
Hmm.
boyfriend, mishaps in relationships, but there have been, and especially recently, some very serious subject matter sort of storylines that get into
Hmm.
domestic abuse, sort of interpersonal relationships between or among friend groups, and how
Hmm.
like you can have like an ex, especially in the gay community, you have like exes that are still sort of in your life, and then they can sort of get too involved, and then they kind of get smacked down, and they become friends, and so I think as I first was interested, obviously like Steve said, the cheese, not cheesecake, the portraits and some of the sexy stuff, I was very like, oh, this is great, looks awesome, very
Yeah.
titillating and all that. But I stayed for the story, and he's done such cool, great work in developing these characters, giving every one of them their own little moments and storylines. So it's really it's just evolved into such a lovely web comic, and that's why I wanted to
Hmm.
feature it. I know it's very popular among the bear community. I
Yeah.
believe Daniel Francesi, actually, one of our sort of friends of friends, he's like got his barely Danny sketch like rendering from this artist as his profile pic. Like
Oh yeah.
has kind of a fairly Tagame Banks, as we just showed. Like so it's known about outside of the bear community. It's known about throughout different communities, and again online. I think he just announced he had like 50K followers on Instagram, and I don't track Instagram metrics. I have no idea if that's like what level that is, but it doesn't matter. It's 50,000 people who like his stuff on Instagram
Yeah.
alone. That's awesome. So
Yeah, definitely. I'm so excited for this too because obviously he had a pretty strong following as Bearskin doing these commissions, for a lot of people within the bear community. So people had already known about him and his artistic ability in making these great portraits of different people. Some of them pretty famous, some of them, or at least famous to the bear community or to the gay community. But with Barely Danny, I think and there's something there that goes not just with the bear community and the gay community, sort of creating this, like you said, idealized version of relationships, but also, the general friend drama that happens, the different storylines that bring in, these different characters, bring them together. But I think there's a lot more of a general appeal to that as well. And of course, who doesn't like looking at really hot dudes, really hot bears? And Danny, of course, loves to. One of the big running gags for the past 3 years is that he doesn't like wearing underwear, and so he's constantly tearing his shorts, accidentally, man spreading and just letting it hang out, to everybody's amusement and horror, from the
I
other
mean,
characters. Yeah.
it's one of those conceits that, let me see if I can find this one here. That's not it. Hold on. I'm gonna find a good example of this for our audience here.
Pretty much
Uh,
any time that Danny's sitting on a bench
did I just pick
or
the
playing
same one
rugby.
twice? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like the equivalent of a nip slip, let's say.
Yeah.
The tip of the dick slip. I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh,
Junk.
see if I get it.
The
Oh,
the
there we
junk
go.
pop.
The junk
Yeah.
pop. I like that.
Junk
But
pop. I mean,
again, for Instagram purposes, like he covers it with this lovely flower bouquet.
yeah.
Because but if you follow him on Twitter or you do his Patreon, of course, and that's let's be honest,
Yeah.
the best way to see all of the detail that you're missing would be to go to his Patreon, which is just barely Danny on Patreon. Because he puts pretty much everything up, full uncut, so to speak, right there. But
literally
Twitter, if you follow him on Twitter and maybe still Tumblr, I don't know. Like you can still see some tastes of what his anatomy's like. But yeah, I love these moments. They definitely are a trope now because it's like he does it quite often with Danny. But I think that's part of the kind of playfulness of the strip. Is it's not meant to be always super deep and gritty, but like honest, serious relationship stuff. It is a fun webcomic that most of the times does this kind of thing. So for what it's worth, I think most people would be good with a lot of the material here, in terms of just appreciating the humor, but also being able to appreciate the darker stuff. But I will say that this is a little problematic in real life. Only because I feel like in this day and age, people probably ought to get that under control. Danny might have to have a talk at some point, is what I'm saying.
There might be something where it's like, there are children that exist in this world that are in the parks and areas where you might be at any time that you're
before you wore the.
Yes.
No, it's
playful.
It's meant to be very innocent. It is. It's not at all in any sense of like he's flashing people. It's not that.
No, it's just, I think that's part of the charm of his character too, is that he's genuinely a huge dork, who doesn't really get that. And of course he's played up. That's played up quite a bit, but he just doesn't get, one, how big he is, or two, how completely unaware of his surroundings and or his clothes or whatever, which is why Zeke is a great sort of counterbalance to that, because usually his reaction to seeing the slip is just either embarrassment or shock or horror, or Chibi Zeke shows up with like the big googly crazy eyes and I think this is it's a good webcomic. Obviously it's definitely for all children, but I think mostly with the imagery, but if you can see also, he uses some of the characters as well to touch on certain international and even very community oriented issues that come up. And one of the characters, Korn, is Thai or of Thai descent, and so with with some of the recent movements there, but also some of the recent I guess you could say demonstrations for greater democratic freedoms out there. Korn actually, or he used Korn to present sort of this.
I wanted
symbol.
to talk about to your point, like he gets involved in social, not social outreach, social demonstration through his comics, and so Black Lives Matter plays a role in there. We talked about the diverse cast. Someone like Korn, who is Thai, also is being he's using that character to talk about that issue. But the other thing I want to talk about with is Korn specifically is he is actually a trans man character, and so not only are you getting good ethnic diversity, and again the interview touches on this a little bit, but you get gender diversity, which is great. I mean, not only are there great gay characters and straight characters, but there's also different people on the gender spectrum. So I love that too. It's very important. Korn was actually really a cool character. They didn't make a big deal about it. It was like, it is what it is. And then eventually you kind of put it together. Like, oh, okay, they're trans men. So like, I love that's part of this whole storytelling too. It's not just a bunch of white, because I'm not throwing any other bear artists under the bus, and there's certainly some fantastic ones. But if you go on Twitter and you look up bara, or you look up, bear, porn, or bear art, or bear erotica, I don't know, whatever the terms are used, you're gonna see a lot of, like, not to be like I'm the stereotype, but like we're like a lot of what you would see, like bigger, hairy, white dudes, and that's fine. But what I like about Barely Danny is it's not just that. There is that. It is probably the gateway for a lot of people. But there are a lot of different other types of people in the story, and that is great, because it shouldn't just be a sausage fest of bears. We need like a term for bear sausage. What would be a good term for
For bear
sausage. It's like
sausage.
sausage party, right? But what's a bear sausage party?
A bear sausage party.
I don't know.
A salmon run? I mean something bear related. I don't know. That would actually that sounds more like a maybe a lesbian party, a salmon run. But anyway,
yeah, we'll have to come back to that. We'll put a pin in that for comic bears. We'll have to come back and figure this out later. But so yeah, we have a couple more just random things here. Like we showed you, Corn's great. He shows up in a lot of stuff. I'm gonna put this. Actually, hold on. Sorry. This is me juggling way too many balls at once here. The Twitter feed. Oh, we can't put up the Twitter feed. I was about to put up his Twitter feed, and then I was like, wait, stop. This is on platforms that we will get banned for putting nudity up. But he does have a Twitter feed. It's at Barely Danny. I think we've talked enough about all that. Let's do his interview because, again, I reached out to him on Instagram, saying, hey, I'd love to do an interview with you. Again, the logistics are a little complicated because, we're doing this through a audio streaming system, not text-based, but we will put the text of this interview up on Flame On Show or on the Facebook for Flame On, so you guys can refer to it later. And if I can fit it in the comments, I'll put it there too. So we were talking about how do we want to do this? Do we want to act it out? Do we want to read it to each other? I don't know what the best way to do this is. It's kind of different. So, Steve, do you have this up in front of you currently?
I do. I've got I have it on my phone here.
So we're just going to trade off. I think maybe just quickly read through it. And again, we appreciate him writing this for us and providing us information. We asked him, I don't know, like seven questions or so. He did just do another interview that I will refer to here in a little bit. It was with a different bear magazine. So, anything we don't cover, I think they solicited fan questions. So, we'll start with ours and then I'll put up the thing for theirs if you can go check that out. But I will start with my first question to him. And then, Steve, I'll have you read the answer. My first question to him is, what led you to create Danny and tell his and Zeke's story?
I'm not going to read it, but I'll read his answer. I'd like to be able to say that it was a long time planned. Oh, my sound went off?
Yeah,
okay.
You're good now, I think.
Okay. I'd like to be able to say that it was a long time planned comic. But that would be a lie. The creation of Barely Danny was not planned at all. I used to do more portraits on Instagram before all this, but once I started a full-time job in graphic design, I had so little free time. I was going crazy for a few months without doing any creative projects for myself, and so I randomly drew these two characters, Danny and Zeke, out of boredom. To my surprise, people really liked them. That's when the story started to come together. It began as an innocent story about a young man having a crush on his friend, and then it grew into much more than that. I have found a great tool to tell the stories I always wanted to tell. I can now do it through these characters. This is by far the longest series that I've ever worked on, and I have no plan to stop anytime soon. So in a way, Barely Danny was a happy accident.
I'm going to put this up here just so we have a lovely photo reference while we do this little live read. So then the next question was, were there other webcomics or traditional cartoons that inspired you and made you want to be a cartoonist?
And he writes back, I read a lot of manga when I was young, like One Piece, Jigoku Sensei Nube, Detective Conan, to name a few. If I had to list all of them, that inspired me in an extremely long list. I think manga was the biggest influence to me, including a few famous bara artists like Gengoroh Tagame and Mentaiko Itto. I, however, didn't start drawing erotic gay art until I got inspired by Nickie Charles, who is one of my biggest inspirations to date. Everyone should know about this talented artist. And when I read that, I'm not really familiar with Nickie Charles.
I was not either, so much so that I just followed him on Instagram, and I'm actually going to reach out and see if he wants to do something, and I'm trying to find again
something that we can show.
Yeah, it's one of those things where there's a lot of great stuff, but it's Twitter, so you're kind of like, okay, well, this is cute. Let me share this one. It's a little but I don't think that's gonna get us kicked off. Whatever. All right, there it is. So, for example,
Hmm.
I guess inspired by Grace Jones. That's an example. So you can see, Nickie Charles
Hmm.
is, I mean, beautiful art in their own right. But you can kind of get a taste for like the cartooning style, and so, and
Yeah.
yeah, bara into sort of other other artists who are inspired by bara. It's become quite a big thing. I mean, there's a lot of great artists on Twitter and in other medium that do this. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, I hadn't heard of them either, so that's
Excellent.
great.
Yeah.
Okay, so Steve, I'll have you read the next question and I'll answer it.
Okay. So who are some of your favorite characters from the increasingly large cast that you want to do more with, and how do you strike a balance, giving everyone their share of the spotlight?
And of course, he writes, "You're right. It is becoming such a big cast, isn't it? I can't help creating more. I'm also not a fan of recycling characters from the same series in different scenarios or making them all related. It would make the world I created seem small. There are main characters and supporting characters, of course. The original four, Danny, Zeke, Tak, and Damien, will always be the focus. However, another two main characters who grew a huge fan base very quickly are Garrett and Johnny. I have a soft spot for them because their characteristics and their relationship is very different from everyone else's. It is a great challenge to write troublesome characters because they come up with harder subjects that I also want to write about. Despite Barely Danny being a feel good comic, it also feels good that the fans love them so much. So I was going to see if we could pull up a. Let me find a great shot of those two. And so both
Hmm.
Johnny and Garrett are more recent additions to the cast. Garrett back, so we kind of referred to the storyline, but basically he
Hmm.
was kind of trying. He's Danny's ex or one of Danny's exes. He's trying to get back with Danny, and there's a whole
Yeah.
storyline where he like manipulates this whole thing and does all this. Let me
Try
see if I can.
several plans to get back with Danny and to get Zeke out of the way. Um,
And it's great because
yeah.
it's kind of fun and cheeky, but then it becomes a little more serious. So the bearded, the darker beard, that's Garrett,
Hmm.
and then Zeke is the one with the fade.
Oh, sorry.
Who?
Uh,
What's that? Oh, Johnny. I said Zeke, didn't I?
Johnny. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah, you said
Johnny. Yeah,
Zeke. Sorry.
Zeke. I get Zeke on the brain. What can I tell you? So Johnny is interesting because I think I pieced together from a photo reference that he posted that he's inspired by a British a British soap opera story
Oh,
from
right.
Emmerdale. Have you ever watched Emmerdale?
Yeah. I
Um,
know of it.
the actor's name is Danny Miller,
Hmm.
and he played Aaron Dingle. Now, I've never watched Emmerdale in my life. I have no idea about it at all. But when he posted like a shot from it as like a GIF, I'm like, oh my god, that's
Yeah.
totally Johnny, which is
Yep.
totally fine because the character Johnny is nowhere I'm sure related to character from Emmerdale, but it is kind of neat seeing the inspiration,
Hmm.
the likeness, and it's not like he's also like a direct photo reference, but I was like I see a little bit of that DNA there. But anyway, so yeah, Johnny and Zeke is. Why do I have like Zeke stuck? I'm stuck on Zeke, which is so funny because like he's like a great character, but he's like not my
Yeah.
not someone I would necessarily focus on otherwise. But anyway, so that's okay. So and then the next question, Steve, I'll have you read that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, as my phone turns
Oh
off on me.
no.
No, here we go. Uh, in terms of representation, we're thrilled that you have several POCs and a trans man character. What other goals do you have in terms of increasing representation of the entire LGBTQIA spectrum? Do you find that it hinders or helps with your story, with telling your stories?
So I think first and foremost, I want to tell authentic stories. And as much as some people in the media don't want to admit, there is diversity everywhere. So telling authentic stories without our diverse cultures is simply contradictory, especially in this medium I'm using for Barely Danny. I write and draw it alone. There is no audition process, no studio guidelines, no limitation who I can include. The choices are all mine. And having POCs and LGBTQ plus characters will always be exciting to write about because we have all these different personalities and backgrounds that can bring out meaningful and engaging dynamics to the stories. I want to embrace it as much as I could while I stay true to what the series is about. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, I really like this, and not just in terms of diversity of the characters' backgrounds, but also body types, which when it comes to the gay community, and like you said, with other artists, a lot of times you get kind of the same body type a lot with a particular type of art style, and you see all sorts of different body types here as well. You've got the sort of thick, hairy muscle boy. You've got the, much thicker but shorter, Asian bodies, different skin colors, different levels of fitness. There is a female character who does have a lot of, shows up a lot, Korra. It's just, there's just the diversity of the characters, and also really shows off the diversity of the body types too. And of course, Korn as a trans man. But it's really really cool. I do like the fact that he was able to do that. And so this answer was so cool.
Yeah, you reminded me, or I'll put it up now. So this is not only a plug for Wolf Bears, which he did an interview with their magazine, which is a bear magazine. But also it does show the cast of characters, and it does talk to and show some of the different, like we talked about, different ethnicities, different genders. In this case, different species. We got a cat in there, and I cannot remember the cat's name to save my life.
Oh, it's Kazem's cat, and I can't remember the cat's name.
Yes, and not a huge character, but adorable when they show up, so that's awesome. Also, we should explain we believe woman in the back that's sort of in this dark silhouette. That is the boss of the gym. Is it a gym, or it's like a whole fitness facility?
It's like a fitness center where Danny works. Danny, Korra, and Korn and Johnny all work. Yes. And that Garrett likes to work out at.
And then a new cast of characters that we are just now being introduced to, or we were just introduced to fairly recently, including that boss character. So, there's a lot more to come, I think, with that storyline. I think they kind of took it to a point. He introduced these new characters. They played a little minor role, and then haven't shown up since. But it's great. They're like you talked about. Like, he's always trying to find new and interesting people to show up, because that's how the world is. The world isn't the same three cast or small cast of characters that are all interrelated, as is so often the case in traditional comics and in a lot of TV even. Like, you have these random people in the world that need to interact. So yeah, I'm glad he does that.
One character I think we haven't mentioned yet, though, Olive, on the far left of this image that you have here. Olive works with Zeke, and was actually one of the first cast members added, beside the initial two, because he also had a crush on Zeke and was part of Garrett's plan to break them apart. But it's just Olive is great because, like we said, diversity of characters, body types, backgrounds. He's also, a good representation of the, less strict mask representation of the bear community especially, and gay community at large. There's actually several strips where he and his roommate Kazem have to kind of like butch it up for different family members that show up. Like the uncle,
who's always naked for some reason.
He's always naked, and I'm wondering if that's going to go somewhere interesting.
That,
but
right? Like, that's a thing, isn't it?
I don't think I ever had an uncle that would just walk around naked, though.
Oh, maybe it's me. I don't know.
Well, what's his name?
No, that's not true.
Oh, hey.
That's totally not
no. But it's fun with that, because it allows him to sort of comment on sort of that type of attitude within the gay community, where it's like, mask for mask, this, that, and the other.
Oh yeah, no, it's
here's Olive being fabulous.
Olive is fabulous, and you said it great. I'm not going to add anything to that. So I will start with question 5, and you can read his response. 5 is, what's your process like creating these strips? Do you draw them first and write the dialogue, which is sort of the one-man Marvel style, or do you plot everything out ahead and then just draw from a script? Are you traditional, which I pencil ink, or digital, or somewhere in between?
And he writes, I always like to write, maybe even more so than drawing comics. So I always start with writing first, or for any creative projects. With Barely Danny specifically, I usually write down ideas whenever they come to me. Then I start scripting and planning the pages the week before I draw them out digitally. It's not until I actually put them online that they're all truly finalized. I try to change my mind quite often. I think any creative person can relate to that.
There you go.
Cool.
So the next question, Steve, just as a note for you, if you read the answer,
Yeah.
you saw the change that he
Yeah, I
made a
saw the
slight
note.
change. Yeah.
Yeah, small change to that.
So I'll read the question and then you can read the answer. What are your goals for Barely Danny in terms of the webcomic or other publishing avenues? Example, graphic novels, audio, video adaptations.
Which would be really cool to see. So he had mentioned that he would like to print them into a series of comic books at some point. But of course, he's extremely busy these days and hasn't had a chance to really look into it. But
But it is a dream of his to adapt it into
yeah.
live action, right?
Yeah, and he says that here, like, it's also a dream to adapt into a live-action TV show. My passion is in filmmaking, and it would be so interesting to show a different aspect and potential of Barely Danny in another medium. In time, I'd like to find a way to make that happen.
And in fact, at one point, I think he even put out posts because not only is he doing like great content, but he's also very social media savvy, and he engages with his audience in a really great way, asking questions, does polls, contests. Like he's done a lot of fun little interactive social media things like that. And he did who would you cast as these characters? Poll slash.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Yeah, I don't remember any of the ones that were collectively came up with, but it's up on Instagram in there somewhere.
I know one of them, and one of them was funny. It was Constance Wu for Korra, which I was like, I just love watching Constance Wu in anything. So it doesn't like, yes, play Korra. Actually, she should play all of them, just like with different wigs.
Yeah,
just because I love her. But
I want to see anime. So I really, as much as I would love to see a live action, I would love to see an animated version of this because I love his art style enough that I would actually be really intrigued to see it adapted into something that was like either full, like regular animated, like cartoon, or something like an animatic or the motion comic kind of thing, but with voices. Because I think that would be so much fun to do like an audio visual kind of combination there, but to really preserve his style because it's such a nice style. So I don't know. We'll see what comes, as far as all this and at what point he makes. I mean, right now he's only webcomics, so he definitely has a lot of opportunities. I think to come for his work. So that's really exciting.
Well, he's been doing it for 3 years, so he does have at this point. It's in season 3 for 2020. There's a good amount of material that he can play with.
Oh yeah.
And can adapt. So
absolutely. So our final question for him. I don't know, Steve. Go ahead and read this one for him.
Sure. What else would you like for our audience to know about yourself or Barely Danny? Where can they find your work?
So we've already talked about some of this, but his answer was, I'm not entirely sure what to say about myself in this instance. Maybe I'll take the opportunity to clear up misunderstanding some of my readers have about me. I am not Danny. All the characters and stories are fictional. There, I said it, hopefully for the last time. So, this is my aside here. As we have said, I think he is very private in certain ways about who he is and what his background and all that. But at the same time, I think he's frustrated because so many people assume that he is Danny. And it's like, that's like, why would you ever make an assumption about an artist like drawing a person? Like, obviously that isn't always just them. Yeah, some artists like Cena, who does autobiographical comics, Cena Grace, like obviously he's going to draw him. But like not always, at all. So I mean, anyway. So I'm sure he's frustrated. And I'm glad he's taking this opportunity to clarify, and hopefully there's no more people mistaking him for that. Anyway, so I'll resume his response here. Barely Danny can be found on Instagram and Twitter at Barely Danny, or you can read the entirely comic. You can read the entire comic with no censoring and early access pages on his Patreon, which again talked about earlier is patreon.com/barelydanny. Lastly, I want to say thank you for having me. And to all the fans and Patreon supporters, you are the reason Barely Danny has made it this far, and I couldn't do it all without you, XOXO. So, obviously, I think
Yep.
he's very appreciative of his fan base. He caters to it as much as he can, and he interacts with them as much as he can. I mean, he's been very responsive on Instagram. And I'm not even a Patreon member, so he's good and happy to, I think, talk to his community. Just
Mhm.
make sure you don't come at him with this, like, oh, hey, I think you're really hot. Your ginger cup like appearance is such. But it
Nope.
is great. And again, also of note, these were a few questions I threw at him, and he had some great responses. But if you're interested in more question and answering with him, Wolf Bears, like I said, they did an interview with him where they solicited fan questions, and it's all up on their Instagram account, which I think is it on there? Did he tag it? He didn't tag it. I don't see it tagged. So if you look up, at Wolf Bears, he tagged it.
At Wolf Bears.
And I that's another thing I have to follow now, because I had not followed them previously. So that's great. But I've got them now. I don't know what else is there to say about this webcomic. I mean, there's just so many interesting characters, and it's like Steve, you said it perfectly. It's been going for 3 years, so there's a lot of content out there. You can go back and read most of it all up on the Instagram.
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm kind of flipping through it a little bit, trying to see if there's any other little moments that we can share. Oh, well, here's another nice one here. Let me share another one before we head out here. Because again, I think it's important that we recognize artists that do social media, social
Yeah.
justice outreach, and advocacy, and you know, clearly he is an engaged and involved creator. He's not just in his own bubble, but he's also politically and socially involved. So that's important. That's really cool. I'm glad to see that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's it. Is there anything else about this we want to throw out there?
Uh, well, one thing I did want to mention about his engagement with his fans, he will, there are a lot of people who obviously are fans of his work over time, getting portraits of themselves. One thing that he's done, and you mentioned the contests, but also really like his work, he will do sometimes just one panel, like one panel scenes where characters from Barely Danny are interacting with the fan, just drawn as part of, like, oh, hey, they're at a party or they're at a picnic or whatever. And it's kind of fun to see, because it's almost, it's, if you're a big fan, it's always cool to see yourself in that work, literally. And he has been known to do that too. So keep an eye out for any more contests, or if he has a casting call, so to speak, for anybody who wants to make an appearance.
Yeah, I'm very jealous that I didn't know about that until more recently, and I certainly love to support my artist friends as much as I can with as many ways as possible, Kickstarter, Patreon, whatever. But if there's a little extra, hey, we'll put you in our story. I mean, that's always cool too. So I lie. Well, so thank you so much, Steve, for helping out with this. This was very last second. I had some other plans for this, and we made it work. So I'm really glad I got you involved, roped you into another thing. Of course, as we mentioned,
All good. It's my pleasure.
Good. At Barely Danny. If it was your punishment, that'd be a whole other discussion. At Barely Danny on all the platforms to find out more about his work, and for us, Comic Bears, obviously at Comic Book Bears on pretty much again all the social media platforms. We're actually going to be back this Thursday if you're watching live at 6:30. Is that right? 6:30 Pacific. No,
yeah, 6:30 Pacific.
9:30 Eastern.
Yeah, 6:30 Pacific. 9:30 Eastern.
I always flip that now, as I'm just totally an East Coast boy out in the West Coast. And then Flame On, of course, this is going to be an ongoing series that I'm going to be doing. We'll try to get Steve back to do another thing, hopefully coming up. But next week, currently, I think we're lining up some good stuff. So spend your Labor Day evening convalescing and recovering. Hopefully nothing too crazy and outlandish out in the world. But we'll be here to talk more about comics with cool creators. So until next time, thanks for listening and watching.
Yeah. Take care. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Oh, and I have to say, like and subscribe. If I don't, I
Like
think
and
somebody
subscribe.
somewhere gets upset. So like and subscribe, whatever you're watching on. Just like and subscribe and click the bell and I don't know, whatever other things you can do. It really, I half joke, but it really does make a difference. So, if you like what you're seeing, give us some love. So, anyway, peace.
Good night.